The Terrifying Lies Podcast, with music and stories by Craig Nybo. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Terrifying Lies Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Nybo. It's good to have you back. I see you've returned, ready for another round of stories that twist and turn. If you're new here, today's episode is part 4 of a 10-part story. If you haven't caught the first 3, you might find yourself scratching your head. That's okay. Confusion is part of the fun. However, I do recommend you go back and listen from part 1. Before we jump in, let me remind you about the Freestyle Gargoyles. We've featured it on this show before. It's an event where we invite authors into the studio, play an improvised soundtrack, and let them read their stories. If you want to hear the latest taping, check out the weekly episodes on the Rust Monster Band YouTube channel. That's Rust Monster, all one word. You'll find something strange, something wild, and something definitely chaotic. Enough of this, let's get on with the story. Just a reminder, this is part 4 of a 10-part story. If you haven't listened to the former parts, you might be confused. So far, the Ice Beetles, an alien race on an alien planet, are under threat from their mortal enemies, the Voles. The leader of the Ice Beetles has sent a crack team on a mission to launch a salvaged Earth vessel into space and try to find sympathy for their cause. This small group of 5 beetles is now on board the ship. Can they get the old rust bucket off the ground? Well, you'll have to listen to find out. Let's go. See you on the other side. This story is entitled Poison Nickels Across the Universe, Part 4 of 10. Winkle worked on the bridge. He'd set the ship on course for the nearest habitable planet. The more he learned about human technology, the more he loved and admired the species. He spent years visiting the marooned Earth vessel and had studied the math behind the ship's relativity engine, a device called the Alcubierre drive. The specialized drive, fueled by some form of exotic matter, enabled the ship to actually warp relativity in its path and travel at faster than light speed. The ship would reach its destination, a small planet called Arion 3200 B3, as delineated on the USS Arlington's database, in a little more than 4 weeks. Winkle had been researching venues and prominent personalities in the human entertainment world, about producers, A&R people, recording contracts, tour schedules, and many other aspects of what it took to become a famous rock and roll group. He was looking at a series of contract samples when the computer blinked out. Occasionally, ship systems had stalled for reboot, but this time was different. The ship slammed out of hyperrelativity travel as the Alcubierre drive failed. The shock rippled through the vessel's workings, tossing everything forward as anti-gravity briefly lost hold. The force of momentum caused Winkle, who always strapped himself in, to bang his head on the control panel. The ship slid into a drift. The lights went out for a handful of seconds before the reserve energy system took over. Winkle shook his head, trying to clear his wits. His compod lit up and Chi's voice came through, broken and disheveled.
Winkle, what happened? Can you read me?
Winkle pulled his compod out of his exoskeletal pocket and raised it to his mouth.
I'm not sure. The ship has experienced Alcubierre drive failure and the network is shut down.
What does that mean?
Chi asked.
It means we are adrift and without access to the ship's records until we can figure out a solution.
Chi opened the compod signal to all hands.
This is Colonel Chi of the Poison Nickels unit. I request verification of individual statuses, please.
Nasher here. I'm all right, but I took a pretty hard header into my quarters wall.
Stig here. I've had worse.
Winkle's compod hissed out its form of silence for a long moment. Finally, Chi's voice came through.
Gorn, this is Colonel Chi of the Poison Nickels unit. Can you please verify your status?
More hissing.
Nasher, can you go to Gorn's quarters and get a report?
I'm on it.
Nasher said.
I'm coming to you, Winkle.
Chi said.
Standing by.
Winkle said and put his compod back into its exoskeletal pocket. Chi entered the bridge, Winkle had made himself busy trying to come up with a way to find the source of the network outage.
Report?
Chi asked.
We're not without recourse.
Winkle said, and held up a palm-sized device, a cube fixed with a pair of antennae and a series of buttons and knobs.
This is a diagnostic tool called a line crawler. The walls of the ship cover conduits of network cable that convey the main computer's orders, both navigational and communicational. We are completely offline until we can find the source of the damage.
How do we use the device?
If the damage is located along the network cable line, this device can help us track it down. But it is a manual routine. I have a hard copy of the ship's network. The device must be in proximity to the cable line in order to function. It gives two indicators: an all clear or an open signal, meaning there is damage in the network cables. But I will have to talk someone through the process and lead them through the guts of the ship along every network line.
What if the damage isn't to one of the lines?
Then our problem deepens.
Winkle said.
A main computer malfunction, such as a virus or physical damage to the logic center, is the only other option. If either of these are the case, I am afraid we might be adrift indefinitely.
Chi walked back and forth across the bridge, snapping his spicules as he thought through the dilemma. His compod came to life. Nasher's voice broke the silence.
I've located Gorn. She was unconscious in her quarters, but she's okay. We are seeing to her wounds.
Chi spoke into his compod.
Excellent. Can you and Stig come to the bridge?
Copy that. We'll stabilize Gorn, then we'll come up.
Chi looked at Winkle. Winkle spread his rakes and shrugged. The old scientist's grave expression told Chi that they were facing a substantial problem. Stig and Nasher moved through the tortuous hallways of the Earth vessel. Stig ran the line crawler along the walls, listening to the low, green hum of the all-clear indicator, a soothing sound that said everything was a go. Nasher kept an ear on his compod, listening as Winkle led the two of them down one hall and up the next. In the meantime, the ship canted on its side and drifted through space, having lost its sense of direction and power. Chi had ordered Gorn to keep a close watch on the atrium food supply. The foliage invigorators that kept the plants fed, watered, and alive were functioning on emergency power. Winkle estimated that they had no more than a month of reserve energy before the entire ship went dark, and their food and oxygen supply would begin to die. Room by room, Stig and Nasher conducted their careful inspection. Winkle led them systematically through the schematics of the ship. They followed a network channel along a lengthy hallway until they reached the engineering and networking room. Stig punched a code into the room's security keypad. The door slid on its tracking, failed, clunked, and came to a stop, partially open. Stig glanced at Nasher, confused. Nasher pushed Stig aside and put a shoulder to the door. Inch by inch, he forced it open enough to allow the two Ice Beetles to enter the engineering and networking room.
We're in the engineering and network center.
Nasher said into his compod.
There's a problem with the door's power supply.
Strange.
Winkle said through the compod.
All doors should be on emergency power. Run the lines. See what you can find.
Copy that.
Nasher said. Stig raised the line crawler until he found the familiar all-clear hum. He edged along the wall, running the device back and forth. He worked his way around bank after bank of machinery and computers. As he passed the line crawler over a certain portion of the wall, it began to crackle, subtle at first. He worked the device back and forth, exploring the wall more thoroughly. The crackle increased until the all-clear tone faded out altogether. Stig stopped and placed one of his rakes on the wall. He leaned up against the metal and put an ear to the cold surface.
We've got something.
Nasher said into the compod.
What is it?
Winkle asked.
A break in the all-clear signal behind the engineering and networking room wall.
Can you gain access?
Give me a minute.
Nasher said. He joined Stig against the metal wall.
There's something in there.
Stig said. He clicked off the line crawler so both of them could better hear. Scratching came from the other side as if something was trapped behind the wall. Nasher ran one of his rakes along the surface until he found a seam in the plate metal. He moved a spicule along the seam until he found a series of machine screws that held the panel in place.
Tools,
He said. Stig reached into an exoskeletal pocket where he kept a small stash of tools, organized by size and frequency of use. He drew out a pneumatic driver and snapped a bit into its head. He handed the tool to Nasher. In seconds, Nasher had the screws out and was holding the plate steel in place with one rake. He looked at Stig to see if his partner was ready. Stig nodded. Nasher readied 4 of his rakes into a defensive fighting stance, then backed away from the wall, releasing his hold on the steel plate at the same time. The steel plate clattered down on the metal floor. A wall of smoke came from the opening. Both Nasher and Stig coughed as the combination of smoke and ozone hit their nostrils. It was while they were coughing, momentarily off guard, the beasts leapt out of the hole and attacked. In a fury of fur and exoshell, a fight broke out. One of the creatures mounted Nasher's back and began biting his head. Nasher reached backward and slapped an open rake on the creature, driving his spicules into its hide. The thing whined out a shrill scream as Nasher yanked it over his shoulder and threw it onto the floor. The smoke and ozone had cleared away just enough for Nasher to recognize exactly what it was he and Stig were dealing with. The hemolymph in Nasher's veins seemed to change directions as he recognized the vile thing. He barely registered that Stig had been overtaken by 2 more of the creatures. Nasher reached out with 4 of his rakes and buried as many spicules as he could into the vole. The thing whined again. Nasher bore down and concentrated on the raw strength of his 4 appendages. He tore the vole to pieces. Fur, blood, and sinew blew out of the rodent's body and splattered against the walls, floor, and ceiling of the engineering and networking room. Nasher turned to Stig. Together, the 2 Ice Beetles tore apart the other 2 voles, ripping them to shreds, making sure that there was no chance that the things would live to see another moment. After the short fight, Nasher drew the compod from his exoskeletal pocket and raised Colonel Chi.
you'd better get down here.
Nasher said.
We have voles.
The compod went silent for a moment, then Chi's voice squelched through the tinny speaker, deliberately calm under the weight of the new development.
I'll be right there.
Stig, Chi, and Nasher stood in the engineering and networking room looking over the strewn-out remains of 4 dead voles. They said nothing for a moment as the weight of the situation settled in.
Maybe it's just the 4 of them.
Stig said hopefully.
Not a chance.
Nasher said.
There are always 10 for every one you see.
An infestation?
Stig asked.
Might not be if we find the nest quickly.
Chi said.
We have vole proximity sensors in our equipment. I'll get on it immediately.
Nasher said.
Better make it yesterday.
Chi said.
If we have an infestation, we might as well abort this mission before it's even begun.
At least the damage is minimal.
Stig said, surveying the chewed-up networks and power cable in the wall.
Looks deliberate, though. Almost like they knew where to strike.
How could they know this ship?
I don't know.
Stig said, poking his head around the opening into the wall.
The walls have ears. It would behoove the voles to bring along a spy who can speak our language.
Chi snicked his spicules, trying to keep his rage in check.
Get on it now.
He said to Nasher.
If there is a nest, we need to torch it as quickly as we can.
Nasher nodded and left the engineering and networking room. He headed for weaponry and supplies. If there was a nest on board, he didn't plan to find it unarmed or ill-equipped.
How long will it take you to repair the damage?
Chi asked Stig.
I found where the Earth creatures keep their tools and tech supplies. I can re-pull new cable and have us up and running within the hour.
Do it.
Chi said.
I'm going with Nasher to see what I can do to help. If you need anything, raise me. Stay in contact with Winkle. We need the ship's computers and Alcubierre drive back online.
Stig nodded and went to work, moving across the engineering and networking room to a store of stowed tools and spare equipment. Colonel Chi snapped his pincers as he left the engineering and networking room. Things had been too easy thus far. He should have expected a crack to develop in the ice. He cursed himself for not being more vigilant. Chances were the voles were here on the Earth vessel all along, multiplying, biding their time till the opportunity became ripe for attack. The network blinked on and off as Stig worked on the damaged cables in the engineering and networking room, giving Winkle occasional glimpses of system and sensor readings. At one point, Stig gave Winkle enough time to confirm that they hadn't lost the Alcubierre drive. He breathed a sigh of relief as the network went black again, while Stig worked on the lines.
I think I just about have it.
Stig said through his compod.
You should have network and ship controls back online in a few seconds.
Winkle waited patiently, staring out the big bridge window into space, thankful to Teich, the god of ice, and to General Nishang for putting the best of the best on this mission. A lesser detachment would have failed and spent out the rest of their long days adrift and starving. At least the network downtime hadn't impaired Gorn's ability to write songs. She'd been working tirelessly, but had refused to share any of her lyrics or melodies until she felt they were complete. Winkle felt confident that they could establish a sound as a band that would draw alien races in across the universe. They only needed time to develop their craft, but not too much time. The faces of the suffering they'd left behind on Hall were always in Winkle's mind. He wondered how the colony fared in the haunted ice vaults of the wastelands. The bridge came alive with a series of blips and crackles. The giant observation window milked over and the network systems appeared on screen. A mixture of files, status indicators, and Earthling data showed that all systems were a go, at least for now. Something new appeared on the proximity display, a 3D holographic representation of space surrounding the USS Arlington, reaching out several light years in every direction. A red blip blinked, far off, in space. Winkle slanted his eye bones as he watched the little red blip. Could it be a satellite? Perhaps a large piece of space debris? He sat down at the command center and accessed the ship's archives. He wrote a query algorithm directed at the blip. 1 billion queries hit the database, searching for a signature associated with whatever it was out there in space. After several minutes of the computer rolling through its records and blinking out displays of numbers, letters, and symbols, a 2-dimensional tag popped up pointing to the blip. The words on the pop-up indicator read, Trade Vessel, Private Corporation, Polydrus System. Winkle stood from his chair, shocked by the proximity of another vessel in space. He calculated the chances of meeting another craft at nearly zero, and yet, there it was, blinking on the holographic display. He raised Chi on the compod.
I'm in the middle of something.
Chi said.
Can it wait?
I'm afraid it can't.
Winkle said, keeping his eyes on the mysterious blink.
Can you report to the bridge?
I'm turning the search for a possible Vol nest over to Nasher, and I'm on my way. If we have an infestation on our hands, we can't afford even a moment's distraction.
It should only take a minute of your time,
Winkle said. The bridge door hissed open, and Colonel Chi entered. He stalked across the floor to where Winkle sat, staring up at the indicator screen.
What do you have?
Chi asked, trying to hide the impatience from his voice.
Can you see that blip?
Winkle said, pointing at the little red light on the 3D proximity holograph.
What is it?
She asked.
A ship.
Winkle said.
What are the chances of us running into a ship?
I would say 0. However, we are in a major shipping lane.
Winkle said.
The Earth vessel is locked onto a route used by thousands of intergalactic travelers. I suppose there is a possibility of a chance meeting.
Then we will pass them with no contact.
Chi said.
Contact may be exactly what we need.
Winkle said.
Perhaps they might have information that can help us.
Colonel Chi looked at the blip for a long moment.
I don't feel good about it. Call it a gut feeling. Keep our course locked on Aeron 3200B3. Keep me appraised of the trade ship's activities.
That I will,
Winkle said. Nasher used a Vol proximeter to search for the source of the infestation. He locked the device onto the biological signatures of the rodents. As he wandered the hallways of the Earth vessel, he kept his eyes on the little screen set into the top of the device. Part of Nasher ached for a fight. His little tiff with Stig at his side back at the engineering and networking room had aroused his appetite for violence. Like most other Ice Beetle soldiers who moved through the ranks to eventually become Shrievers, he'd long fostered a red-hot hatred for the rodents. The Vol proximeter chirped, indicating that voles were moving somewhere in the ship. Nasher continued his search, listening to the proximeter blip on and off as he paced through the vessel. The blips became more frequent. He was getting closer to his target. He moved through a series of automatic doors, listening to the pulse of the blips increase. Then, the blips became a constant tone. He stopped and aimed the Vol proximeter at a closed door marked with a set of stenciled human symbols. He'd found them. He put the device into an exoskeletal pouch and drew back into a defensive position. He looked both ways, up and down the hallway, calculating the time and space he would need should he have to retreat. He drew a couple of calming breaths, filling his hemolymph with enough oxygen to keep him energized and nimble. Remaining in his defensive stance, he reached out with a single spicule and keyed in the code Winkle had taught him on the security panel. The door hissed open. Voles came at him. He took the first two rodents apart with the Predator Beetle speed and fighting accuracy only employed by Shrievers. But they kept coming, in twos and threes, driving him back away from the door. The room he had opened, a storage facility by the looks and smell of it, was filled with voles. The room probably offered the creatures some kind of food source, or they would not have been able to multiply with such alacrity. Nasher stopped his retreat and stood his ground. He had to get back to the door. He pushed forward, taking voles apart. A trio of beasts got behind him and mounted his shell, burying their claws into his back and chewing at the outer rim of his exoskeleton. If given enough time, they would penetrate and get to his organs. There were too many voles to face alone. Nasher's only hope was to close the door on the nest. He pushed forward, concentrating on the onslaught of rodents, ignoring the voles on his back, who continued to scratch through his shell. He grabbed another advancing vole by the throat with one of his rakes and buried his spicules into the creature's flesh. He felt bones break beneath his grip. The creature went limp. Nasher let it drop to the steel floor and moved on. He killed two more before he gained enough ground to access the door's control panel. Pain sprung from his back. One of the voles clinging there had cut through his outer shell and had begun tearing at the muscle and fiber tissue beneath. Nasher felt his strength leave him. The last of his grit, he reached out with one rake and tapped the close button on the door panel. The door slid shut, hard on the body of an advancing vole. The rodent arched and screeched under the strain of the door. Nasher kicked the beast, took 4 good blows to send it back into the nest. The door clanged shut behind it. Nasher fell forward under the weight of the 3 voles who were now close to feasting on his internal organs. He sent up his final prayer to Taich, the god of ice, wincing out the words that would induct him into the courts of the eternal ice palaces.
Take my soul, cool my shell, bring me to thy eternal rakes.
Just before Nasher closed his eyes and gave his life to the voles, a clatter arose in the corridor. He felt the voles on his back tear away one by one. The noise of battle escalated, rattling and smacking against the metal walls. The whine of rodents, the spicule crush of vertebrae. The fight lasted only seconds, then everything went quiet. Nasher somehow found the strength to push himself up from the cold floor, but pain stopped him before he could make his haunches. He collapsed and let his eyes drift closed. Stig crouched down to Nasher's side.
Stay with me. You're gonna be okay, but you have to stay awake.
Nasher nodded and half opened his eyes. He heard Stig raise Gorn on the comm pod. He heard the two of them talk back and forth in frantic tones about the seriousness of his wounds. Then he blacked out. Gorn worked tirelessly over Nasher, applying a pulp of stems from antibiotic plants Winkle had placed into the atrium as part of his research. He thanked Tyche, the god of ice, for his foresight in restocking the ship's stores with plenty of medical supplies. Over the next few days, she saw consistent recovery in Nasher as his body began to heal from the thrashing the Voles had given him. She changed his bandages several times a day and kept the infection at bay. She moved her songwriting to sickbay so she could stay by his side around the clock. As she looked over his broken body, she recalled greater images of him in battle, images that she had seen many times against the Voles back on Hull. By watching him sleep, she found new inspiration. She penned a few verses into the little book she'd taken to keeping with her at all times. She'd never expressed herself or the plight of the Ice Beetles in words before. She'd even tried on a few melodies for size, placing her words into careful rhythm. She'd requested many videos of the Beatles, as Winkle could draw from the ship's archives for her research. In a way, even though the sound of the human rock band seemed unfitting to her Ice Beetle ears, she found peace in some of their music, particularly in songs such as Octopus's Garden and I Am the Walrus. She used some of these songs as frameworks for her own writing. Sitting in a chair in sickbay with Nasher lying on the table in front of her, all wired to the ship's vital medical systems, she flipped through her book to one of her many songs. She'd written a score of them. Some of them, her early attempts, she'd thrown out. This particular song, however, she had deemed to be included in the 10-song set list Colonel Chi had ordered her to write. She called it Calling All Planets. She'd used the song Yesterday by the Beatles as inspiration. She'd even written the words to Calling All Planets to the melody of Yesterday. She sang the words out loud to Nasher, who lay unconscious on the sickbay bed.
Ravages, planet whole, it stands in ravages. The colony is wrought with savages. Furry bulls with surly goals, progress halts. The colony moves to the haunted vaults, going underground with wraiths and ghosts, because the Voles attacked their homes. Why they had to go, no one knows. Why there is war. Now their refugees deem to wander evermore. Calamity, we can't seem to beat the fight, you see. And so we reach out to the stars beyond for aid and help and hope and love.
Gorn finished the song and looked off into space, to somewhere beyond the walls of sickbay, to a place transcendent of the plight she shared with the other 4 poison nickels. The sound of clicking spicules brought her back. She looked down at her patient. Nasher snapped his rakes with weak rhythm. The customary display of approval among Ice Beetles. Gorn had heard spicule snapping from thousands of ice rakes back on Hull every time she and the other chanters had finished their showing of choreographed flying. Every time they'd sounded their tocsins and issued the glow of their chemically lit abdomens during chanter vigils. But never had she heard a sound so satisfying as the lone spicule click of the wounded soldier lying on the sickbay bed before her. She dropped from her chair and went to his side. He lay on his belly, his head turned toward her, his eyes open. The first movement Gorn had seen since Stig and Chi had brought him to sickbay. She crouched down and looked into his eyes. He drew in a breath, shallow, but as much air as his lungs could hold without the pain overtaking him.
If the poison nickels play that song, help will come to Hull in the form of 1,000 ships. I can see a cloud of metal coming from the skies to defeat the Vols at long last.
How do you feel?
Gorn said, surveying his wounds, the anesthetics, and the medicines she had crushed into pulps and spread into Nasher's wounds were working. He was speed healing.
I am ready to stand,
Nasher said. He attempted to push himself up from the bed.
You will do no such thing.
Gorn placed a tender rake on his shell and gently helped him to lie down.
You're healing quickly, but you couldn't have been closer to death. It'll take more time for you to mend. I have orders to keep you here until you are ready to take up your duties.
Nasher looked at Gorn, at her figure, narrow at head and abdomen tip, wide in the middle, so beautiful in her shell, the softer variety genetically passed down from chanter to chanter. Staying in sickbay with her for a while didn't seem like such a bad thing. He let his pincers relax, a pleasant expression came over his face, and he allowed the tension to leave his body. He could feel his physique healing. It would only be a matter of days before he would be on his feet, but since he was out of the action anyway, he felt he might as well relax and try to work out his plan of action against the Vol infestation. Gorn plucked her compod from its exoskeletal pocket and raised Colonel Chi. She informed him that Nasher had become conscious and that his body was on the mend. Within a few minutes, Chi came to sickbay to speak to his old friend and brother-in-arms.
You ended up on the wrong side of that fight,
Chi said as he sat down across from Nasher, where he could look the Shriever warrior in the eye. Nasher smiled.
You discovered a full Vol nest. I've ordered Stig to weld all the access to the storage facility shut. There are more than I care to contend with.
We could flame them,
Nasher suggested.
I don't want to risk it. We have no recourse should we damage the ship,
Chi said.
Besides, there are only 5 of us. It might be 50 to 1.
How many did I kill?
Nasher said.
5 in all.
Only 5 on 1? I'm getting rusty.
Chi chuckled.
I think you'll have a chance to fight yet, old friend. There are new developments. Winkle's found another ship in our proximity. The computer has identified it as a trade ship from a planet called Politras. He says the ship is locked onto us and it is approaching its superluminal speed.
Do we trust that it is a trade ship and not looters?
We're keeping our guard up. Should reach us in 2 days. We'll hail it when it gets into range. I've ordered Winkle to remain neutral until we know their intentions.
Nasher closed his eyes for a moment. There was never any rest for warriors. He wanted to believe the ship was on a trade mission, or perhaps that it was some kind of alien transport craft, but a gut sense told him otherwise. He had to get out of sickbay. He had to get back into fighting form. He opened his eyes and glanced over at Gorn, who smiled back at him. He looked up at Chi.
On another note, Gorn over there has graced me with one of her songs.
Chi glanced over his shoulder at the chanter.
And?
Chi said.
She's a master,
Nasher said.
Any being who listens to her words and isn't moved doesn't possess a soul. We're bound to find help for the colony.
Chi moved over to her and placed a rake on her exoshell.
Continue your compositions. We need your words. Winkle's busy finding intergalactic venues where we can perform and spread your message. He's discovered a venue within this parsec that he hopes to contact when we reach hailing range. It's called the Colindrome. It's run by a creature named Slink Arrowheart, a Slorak according to the ship's records. If we're to find intergalactic fame and ears for our cause, it seems to be the Colindrome is the best place to start.
How is Stig coming with the instruments?
Gorn asked.
They're nearly complete. We'll begin lessons soon. With an aggressive rehearsal regimen, we should be able to master the instruments quickly.
Nasher breathed a sigh of relief. With the approaching alien spacecraft still days away and with the Vol nest sealed shut for the time being, at least the Poison Nickels would have a moment of peace before the storm. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you hear, leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Share the show on your social channels You enjoy the show? Help spread the word. Keep it alive. Until next time, I bid you sweet dreams. Or should I say, sweet nightmares.
This has been the Terrifying Lies podcast. Please, come again. You're welcome here.